So I'll take you. We're on Lam Ches Amad Aleph on bottom of 38a by the two dots. We were talking about tchumim, and your utensils and food also have a tchum, and where you, the owner of the utensil or the food, is at on the onset of Yom Tiv, you cannot take that food beyond 2,000 ames. Now, of course, you're not allowed to take it beyond 2,000 ames because you can't go beyond 2,000 ames yourself, but someone else would walk into your house and borrow it from you on Shabbos or Yom Tiv. He cannot take that, and his tchumim are beyond in a different tchum than yours. He cannot take it into beyond the tchum of you. So you only bring it to the area where the both of you are going to overlap. Now, we had a case. He said a case that a woman who borrows from her friend ingredients for her challah, so now she has a challah in front of her. Some is going to be from hers, and some is something that she borrowed. So we said in that case that this challah is locked into tchum of both of them because it's part owned by woman A, part owned by woman B. In the case that each of them have a different tchum, you only can take this challah into the area that both of them. You only can take them into the area that both are allowed to go to. So again, think of two circles. Each have their circle. In the area where the two circles overlap, think of the MasterCard, right? The two logo. The area where the two overlap, that is the area where this challah is allowed to go, is restricted to. Now, Rabbi Yehuda added on in this case that, okay, we'll get to that, but that's the point. That's halakha. Let's start to Gemara. So, the Ema Milsa, okay, it's key. Okay, here we go.
Wait, two dots from
the two dots.
Okay, you mean Kisalik? Is that where you're at?
Kisalik, correct.
All right, okay.
Kisalik Rav Abba, when Rav Abba went up to Eretz Yisrael, Amari Hey Ru'uya the Ema Milsa Deskabel. He went up from above to Eretz Yisrael, and he was saying, may be God's will that I'll be able to say something that will be accepted by the rabbis in Israel. Kisalik, when he went up there, asked Reb Chanina bar Papi, Rav Zera, that he found these three great sages, Reb Yechanan, Reb Chanina bar Papi, and Rav Zera, and V'Amrila, and some say it was Ravua, Reb Shimon ben Pazi, Reb Yitzchak Nafcha, V'Yasvi v'Ka'amri, and they were sitting. So he walks into Eretz Yisrael, he crosses the border, and there's three sages sitting down and discussing the following case. Amai, why is it in our case of the Mishnah? Why is it that the challah is restricted to the tchum of both these women? If you notice in the Mishnah, what did she borrow? So the woman borrowed the water and the salt. Rather spice, water, and salt. So they want to say is like, why is it restricted to this challah should only be restricted to the one that actually baked the challah, because she provided the flour, she provided the oil, the main ingredients. What she borrowed is really insignificant compared to the rest of the ingredients. It was only a bit of salt, a bit of water, and a bit of spices. It should be nullified, and therefore it should not be this challah that was baked using these borrowed ingredients of water and salt. It shouldn't be restricted to the lender's tchum, because that's insignificant. It should be according to the one that actually baked it, because she added the more important ingredients. So Amar Rav Abba. So Rav Abba, after he said that he wants his words to be accepted, so he decided to give it a shot and see if he could answer the question and if it will be accepted. We turn to the top of Lamaches Amid Beis. We turn to the top of 38b, and now this is how he's going to try to answer the question. He's going to say that Hareshin is Ariv like Kav Chitin Basara Kavim Chitin. Let's say you have a kav, a certain measurement of wheat that gets mixed into 10 measurements of the equal measurement of wheat, so 1 to 10. So he wants to know as follows. Let's say usually we have the lacha of bittul, that something could be nullified in if it's solid in 1 to 2. Now, let's say you have something which is clearly nullified halachically, that if it would be not kosher, that fell into kosher, it would be nullified, whatever the case is. But if it's not his, that if his fell into his friend's, do we say that his friend got to go and eat it? No, because he still has to go and remove one kav and return it to his friend. Nullification doesn't take care of the monetary issue involved. So what he wants to propose is that it's not going to take nullification can't take place is because the woman who just added the water and the water and the salt. She still has some ownership over the bread. So you can't say nullification. You want to say that we're going to use the laws of nullification to say that the woman that the woman who baked it and worked hard on it and gave the flour and gave the oil, it should be hers, and therefore it should go according to her tchum, her 2,000 amos, saying no such thing, because the other woman, even though she just added the bread and all she added was bread and all she added was oil, was salt and water, but still. We should still go ahead and say that it's not going to be batul because she has a partial ownership, whether you like it or not. She's got to return it. Next day she has to go return the salt. She has to go return the water. So until that point, she has partial ownership. Therefore, can't be nullified. Okay. The question is, let it be nullified. And it says it can't be nullified because nullification doesn't take up the monetary issue involved. Therefore, it has to go to chum of both of them. So now he was hoping that this answer was going to work. So they laughed at him. So they didn't really accept it.
Nice.
Well, you know what? A lot of times you gotta, in the Beis Medrash, you gotta have some, good backbone. If you're, if not, you gotta step out. Now, Amrale, Shakli. So he said, well, he wasn't too pleased with this laughing, as he said, "What? I take your coat?" Which I said back then was like silver phrase, like, "Why are you laughing at me? Did I say something wrong?" So they said, "Hadar chichulel." They further laughed at him. They weren't too impressed. Now, our question is, why do they laugh at him? So why? It sounds like a good answer. It can't be nullified because of the ownership involved. So Rav Oishia, Shaper Aved Achichulel. So Rav Oishia said, you know what? It's a good thing that they laughed at him. And now you're going to explain why. We're on 38b, and we are around 5 lines down. So Shaper Aved Achichulel. Now, as Maishtachitim B'Sa'irim. Now the question is, if you go back to if you look at the first line of top of this Gemara of this Amud, the case that he proposed to say that there was no nullification because of the ownership was a case of wheat that fell into wheat. That's called min b'minoi. The same type of item fell into the same type of item. He did not say wheat falling into barley. Now, wheat falling into barley is one item falling into a different item. The laws of nullification change depending if it's the same item getting mixed into the same item or two separate types of item. Now, the Loika Marlu, he didn't say that case. Why? Because that would be a case of min b'she'ena minay, one type of food falling to another type of food, min b'she'ena minay batul, and one type of food falling to the other food. Everyone across the board agrees is nullification. So if you have Cheerios falling into a cornflakes, which is 2 totally separate type of foods, that everyone would agree there is nullification. However, chitim b'chitim, but if you have wheat that falls into wheat, nami nihidil Rabbi Yehuda lay batul rabbanim batul. Now it's a machlekes. Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's not going to be batul, and the rabbis happen to hold that it is going to be batul. But we see that why didn't he wasn't willing to go ahead and talk about min. Now, the case of the challah is it's min if it's type in a different type, right? You have water and salt. We're asking the water and the salt to be nullified by the flour and the oil, whatever else is in this challah. So that's min b'she'ena minay. Now, if you would want to propose that min b'she'ena minay is he didn't bring up that case. He didn't bring an example of two different types of foods, because that according to everyone would be batul. So sort of he brought the wrong example. That's why they laughed at him. You're saying wheat that fell into wheat, so that's not our case. Our case is wheat falling to barley, and why did you not say that case? Because that case everyone agrees is nullification. So even in case of ownership, the ownership should be nullified. So that's why they went ahead and they laughed at him.
Rabbi, why should the ownership be nullified in the second case? I mean, there's still a financial issue here to be settled up, isn't there?
No, but we're not done yet. We're not done yet. We're gonna answer that question. Okay. Now, so that's the reason why they laughed at. Now, Amalei Rav Safra. So Rav Safra said back to Rav Oishia, Moshe, Shaper Ka'amret, you're saying well. However, you're missing out on an essential halachic ruling that you obviously did not hear, as follows. If someone starts going without being asked, and he starts picking out all the stones in his friend's granary. He has to pay back the amount of money in the weight of the stones and the pebbles, weigh the pebbles, and return the amount of money in wheat. Why? Because the halacha is that when he goes and he sells the wheat from his granary, it's understandable that when he weighs it, there will be some pebbles in there, there'll be some little bit of rocks. So the person buying knows that included in the wheat will be some pebbles. By removing those pebbles, so you're removing a certain amount of weight from the entire granary. That's a loss for the one who owns the granary. So alma kila chasra. So we see that you have to pay back reduced weight. If you reduce the weight, you have to monetarily pay it back. Hachanami kila chasri. So in our case also, that you have to go back, you have to go and you have to pay it back. Meaning is that over here, that how could it be? So he's trying to back up Ravo. Ravo wants to say there should be no bittul because of monetary ownership. Then we answered, he's using the wrong example, so therefore even he knows that there would be there would be nullification. We're answering back is like no, that way if you remove an example would be if you remove rocks from a granary, you have to pay it back in the monetary value. So it's the same thing over here. We see that it cannot be bittul because even though it's the weight, for example. If let's say you took out of the challah, you removed the water and you removed the salt, there's going to be reduced weight. So we see you do owe the money. So he's saying very well, basically. So he's saying, whether you like it or not, he had a good point that it's not going to be nullified. The ownership is not going to be nullified, just like in the case when if you take out the rocks, you owe the amount of weight of the rocks in wheat. So therefore, the same case here is that the woman still owes the first woman that she borrowed from the salt and the water. Therefore, how could that be nullified? So Abaya said back, so Abaya said back and said no. The reason why it's not going to be nullified, and the reason why the original question that the rabbis in Eretz Yisrael asked still stands, is as follows: that there's a difference between money that has claimants and money that doesn't have a claimant. In the case of the removing the rocks, the owner of the granary could go and claim the money and say that I'm taking a loss because of it. However, when it comes to the case, at least today, where we stand on Yom Tiv, when you went ahead and you went ahead and you since you went ahead and you since you went ahead and you the woman still owes the money. I'm standing here on Yom Tiv. You don't owe the money yet, right? You borrowed it today. That means you're only going to really pay it back tomorrow. And the woman who you lent it to knows that she's not going to be able to get it back tomorrow. You're not going to pay it back today. It's Yom Tiv. You can't you're not going to go ahead and buy salt and water to return the favor. Therefore, she's no tivia here. There's no claim. If she went to Bezdin today and said she owes me my salt and she owes me my water and I want it right now, the Bezdin will say wait till tomorrow. She doesn't owe it to you. She only borrowed it today. If she had it today, she wouldn't borrow it from you. So therefore, there's no active possible claim on her. So therefore, that is the reason goes back, and we should say that it should be batal. That's where we're holding right now. So first we're saying that it can't be nullified because there's a reduced weight. If you take it out, you could reduce the weight. So we see that if you take out the salt and you would take out the water, so there would be payment involved. So therefore, we see that the other woman has some monetary value. The lender has some monetary value in the challah. Now we're saying no, she doesn't have monetary value in the challah because she can't claim it, even though it's true technically it's hers. On paper it's hers, but she can't claim it. It has to be money which you could claim. So Amrleo Tameich, and according to the reason that it only does not become nullified when there's a possible claim against it. So the following case: Amar Chista. Chista has the following case: Nevela Bakla B'Shchuta. They have a case of if you have nevela, which is an animal which you cannot eat because it wasn't slaughtered properly. Bakla B'Shchuta. It could go ahead and it will be nullified if one piece of nevela fell into many pieces of properly shechted meat. So it would be nullified. Why? The fish after l'shchuta shitasa b'nevela. Now, we're trying to get to the point that meat usually looks all the same. So the question is, when do we say meat is called the same type? And remember, we said there's a difference if it's one type that falls into, when it comes to laws nullification, if one type of food falls into a different type of food, or the same type of food, or one type of food falls into the same type of food, there will be a nullification difference in halacha. Now, when we say there's going to be a difference, when we say different type of food, it doesn't necessarily mean, as I said before, Cheerios and Rice Krispies. But however, it can also be halachic difference. Now, the example would be nevela, same type of meat, from the same type of animal, from the same cut of meat, it looks the same, but there's halachic difference. One is going to be nevela, one was not slaughtered properly, therefore cannot be eaten, and one is slaughtered properly and could be eaten. That is enough to say that it's the min b'she'enai minai. It's one type of food that fell into a different type of food. So in our case, nevela, which is let's call it non-kosher, that fell into shchuta, which fell into a slaughtered. It's the same exact animal. It's a cow, but it wasn't slaughtered properly. Therefore, one cannot eat it. Halachically different than what it fell into, because it fell into food that could be slaughtered. Now we say that it's minshmei nemina, and therefore it will be batal according to everyone. There'll be nullification if it has the right amount. Now, because it's impossible for slaughtered meat to ever turn, which is kosher status, to turn into a nevela status, into non-kosher status. Okay, so therefore, since it's impossible for what it fell into, the shchuta will never become the halachic status of nevela, therefore it's called min b'she'enai minai. It's one type of food that fell into a different type of food, and therefore everyone agrees that it will be nullified. However, the next case, the opposite case is different. Shchuta. If you had meat, which if you had slaughtered meat that fell into nevela meat, so again you have slaughtered meat. One piece of slaughtered meat fell into 10 pieces of non-properly slaughtered meat. Einai bato. We're going to say there's no nullification. And because it's min b'minai, it's one type of food that fell into the same type of food. And if you ask me, we just said the opposite case. We said if the nevela, the non-slaughtered, falls into the slaughtered food, and it's the same cut from the same type of cow, from the same exact, everything's exactly the same. In that case, it was nullified. So if it's the opposite case, that the shchuta, the shchuta, the properly slaughtered meat that fell into the non-properly slaughtered meat. Why is that called the same type of meat? Because if you should efshar l'nevela shetasa shchuta, because at some point the nevela could have the same status as shchuta, meaning the non-properly slaughtered meat could have the same status as the shchuta. So when the shchuta falls in to the non-properly slaughtered meat, if you wait long enough, the non-properly slaughtered meat will go bad. And once it goes bad, at least according on a biblical level, it's kosher. Something which is pogum, something which is totally, it's totally ma'os, it's totally disgusting. There's no real halachic status anymore of being non-kosher. So therefore, at least biblically, it's min b'mina. Now, so now we say hachanami, also by us, yechi islei bailim loy batla. And now we say, but if it's true that you're going ahead to tell us that. So if you want to say that, so if you want to say that whenever there's a claim, we want to say that it shouldn't be nullified. So how could we ever have it should be nullified? So how could you say that when we said the first case that the non-slaughtered meat that fell into the slaughtered meat, it could be nullified. Say, but we're going to assume that there's owners here, right? The shchuta was one owner, the nevela was a different owner, and it fell in and got mixed up. But you're going to tell me, and there should be a claim that how could you take you can't be nullified because part of this, one piece is mine, so how could it ever be nullified? So again, our question is if you're going on the fact that we only go based, if you have a claim or not, basically the question is, if you're going with claims, and whenever someone has a claim, there will be no nullification, then we pretty much wiped out most of your day. We pretty much wiped out all the laws of nullification when it came to food, because in the case that one person's food fell into a different person's food, there'll be never any nullification. And we don't learn that in halakha. So that's his question. So he answers, v'chitema hachanam. He says, you're right. V'atanya amra b'yachem nuri chefzi hefker koinin shivisa. So the answer is that so what's going to be our answer? No, sorry, let me go. And if you say you're right, and hachanami. The whole all the laws, when the rabbi always goes ahead and answers based on nullification, my milk fell into my chunk, what's going to be the halacha, what do I do? That's only if it's the same owner. If it was Eric's milk that fell into my chalent, there'll be no nullification because his milk is still floating in my chalent. I can't see it. It's 1:60. I can't taste it. So according to so across the board, it might be nullified, but still, it's not nullified in essence because he could come and say, "Give me the 10 ounces worth of chalent because I increased the amount of your chalent by 10 ounces." Okay, so and if you say that's true, Vatanya Amra Ben Nuri Heftzi Hefker Koinin Shvisa. I just saw some people join. I don't know when they joined, but we're on Falam Chesam Beis. We're on 38b, and we're about 6 lines up from the bottom. First word on line is Cheftze Hefker. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Cheftze Hefker Koinin Shvisa. That let's say I have items that have no owner, right? They're Hefker. No one could claim it. Even though there are no owners, we view it as if they do have owners. So we see that if there are no, in the case of a tchum. So let's say I have an item which has no owner. Do we say there's a tchum to it or not? The answer, there's a tchum, and therefore wherever, let's say, so I'm walking down the street and I see something which is hefker, and can I pick it up? Now what's with this tchum of this item? So till now it seems to be saying that there's no owners and there's no tchum. We're saying no, there is a tchum, something which is hefker. I pick it up on Shabbos. There's a tchum. What's a tchum? Where this thing was resting on the onset of Shabbos. This is going to be its tchum is going to be a circle of 2,000 ames around this item. So we see that something which has no owner, there is tchum Shabbos. Now, so we see that now our problem with that is that there is no claim when it comes to hefker. Hefker has no claim. So that would mean that when something has no owner, there if something which has no, like hefker, which has no owner, therefore it has no claim, and there is still a tchum, so we see that it doesn't change anything. The fact that there's an owner or there's no owner, nothing changes when it comes to tchum. So we could really apply that to. So we really should go ahead and apply that to. So we see that the fact that there's a claim or not doesn't affect anything. So we're just looking from the opposite point of view. If this item which has no owner, meaning there is no claim, and it doesn't affect the ability if there's a tchum or not, so therefore Rabbi Vo is we're going back to the original question of Vo, which he wanted to answer the question that the reason that when in case of the challah, when there's a mixture of one woman's items with another woman's items, the reason why that tchum is not restricted to the reason why that tchum is restricted to both of them, and one set of items is not nullified by the other one. He wanted to say because of the case of nullification, because there's ownership involved. So we want to say is that yes, there is ownership involved. That so we want to say that we see that. So we want to see that the ability to claim something. Does not affect anything or not. So right now we're saying is that you want to come and say that so we hold on. Yeah, okay. So we want to say that we want to bring out the point that hold on, I don't have it so close. Yeah, so we want to bring a proof to Rabbi Vo. That according to Rabbi Vo, we see from here that just like by hefker there's no owner and still there's a shvisa to it. So the fact that there's the ability to make a claim, or the ability, remember, Rabbi Vo, okay, let's back up one time. It's a bit hard to keep track of all the steps. According to Rabbi Vo wanted to propose that the reason why the challah is locked into both women is because there is no, and the reason why there is no nullification is because there's no owner, is because of that both of them have ownership on this challah. That's what we want to say. We went back and forth. And at one point, with the rabbi, the question on that case was that, but there's no claim. The woman can't claim ownership right now. If she goes to Bezdin, she can't say, I want to pay it right now. Because she'll say, wait till tomorrow. At this day, on this Yom Tov, based on today's Tchum, there is no claim. And that we want to say back is that if an item of hefker if an item of hefker has the ability to have a tchum, we see whether you have a claim or you don't have the claim. It doesn't make any difference when it comes to tchumim. Because if the whole idea of tchum bases around the fact if you could make a claim or not make a claim, then hefker shouldn't have any tchum. No one could claim hefker, so there should be no tchum based on this item on the answer yom tov because no one owned the answer Shabbat because no one owned it. So right now we're bringing a proof to Rabbi Boruch that we wanted to slug up Rabbi Boruch by saying that if there's no ownership, there is the reason because there's the reason why the nullification is you can't bring the ownership as a proof against nullification because there is no claim in this case. Aaron says we don't care about claims as we prove from hefker. Then now we say Amalei Mika Medamis Isurul Mamayna. We said could you really compare Isur to Mama? He's like this is the reason why they laugh. You're right. Everything ends up even Rabbi Boruch is right. Even Rabbi Boruch is right. There's no nullification because of ownership. And really it's true because there's claim or no claim doesn't make any difference when it comes to tchumim or not. At the end of the day, you're comparing apples with oranges. You're comparing the case of Isser, which is tchum. Tchum is something for it's a case. It's not a monetary issue. It's a Isser. He transgressed something. Mamain is a monetary issue. So you're comparing apple with oranges, and it's true she could claim it even if she could claim it in a monetary court. That's not going to affect what's going on with the Isser. With the Isser, it could be nullified, and therefore we're back to our original. If Eric's milk fell into my shalent, we're going to say at the end of the day, that doesn't make a difference. It's true, Eric could come and claim 10 ounces of my chalent because he increased the volume of my chalent by 10 ounces. But, very nice for Bezdin. That's very good with Bezdin, and he could claim it, but it's not going to affect my nullification. I still keep this chalent, it's still nullified. Two totally separate items, and therefore, he says, Surah Batul, you're right. My monetary value in your food is never going to nullify, even if the rabbi say you can eat it because of nullification. I still could claim my monetary value. Totally separate the two items. You cannot mix up the two, and that's why they laughed at him. Their original question was that why can't we not go ahead and why don't we, when we come to the challah, why don't we say that since both of them have shared items in the challah, therefore, why it shouldn't be nullified? And Rabbi Boruch wanted to say because it can't be nullified because the monetary value inside of it. Our answer is who cares monetary value? It's two totally separate different things, and that's why they laughed. Okay, let's continue.
I still want my money.
Still want your money. Okay, the time of my. It's at the end of the day. Why is it in the bottle? Very good. So we still want to know why is it. So we say why is it not bottle? So by Amar Gzer Shemetasa Isa B'Shutfis. So our answer. So we're going to beef the answers. Remember, back to the original question. The original question was that why is it not nullified? If you want to tell me that Isser and Mama are two separate different things, so Rabbi will answer who want to say because of the ownership involved. That's not an answer. So at the end of the day, it's a very good question. If we're talking about Isser here, Tchumim is a Isser. It's nothing to do with Mama. So therefore, why don't we go ahead and say it's nullified? With 3 lines up from the bottom, Lam Ches Amud Beis. The time of my Abai Em Gzer Shemetasa Isa B'Shutfis. There's going to be 3 answers. So Abaye said because we have because we make a gezerah that you were afraid you're going to go ahead and actually have a shukfis. You're right. At the end of the day, maybe you're right that really should be nullified. But maybe we're afraid is that both of them really had a partnership in it. Partnership, everyone agrees that's going to be a shared tchum. Therefore, that's one answer. 2. Rav Amar Tavul Natame Avidi. The Tame Lebato. This and a famous answer that we should have thought of this ourselves, that we say that taste is not nullified. So therefore, if she added the salt adds taste. Therefore, it can't be nullified. That's the answer. We turn to the top of Lam Testament Aleph, 39a. Ravashi, Aimer Mishum Hadahavli Davar Sheish Matir. This we came across several times. I think we came across from Sukkah, we came across from Beitza, that it's something which will be permitted tomorrow. Wait it out, and this tchum will be permitted, right? Wait till tonight, wait till Mitzvah Shabbos, Mitzvah Yom Tiv, and the tchum lifts. Therefore, we say nothing's nullified when it comes to, if you could wait it out in a few hours and it'll be permitted, nothing is never null. We don't say nullification at all whenever you could just wait a few more minutes and it'll be permitted. Okay, we're by the 2 dots on the top of Lam Tesam now. Rabbi Yehuda Paiter b'mayim. We said that Yehuda said that if you give water, then water is really insignificant, and then we totally ignore the water. So if one woman just gave water, then we're going to say is that the challah is going to be based on the woman that baked the challah, and the tchum is based on the woman that baked the challah, nothing to do with the woman that gave the water. Mime in melech light. Now we say. So it seems according to Rabbi Yehuda, if she just gave the water, then we ignore her. We ignore her 2,000 amas. But if she gave the salt, then we'll say, you know what? You only could bring in the share 2,000 amas. Vatanya, but now we say, Vatanya Rabbi Yehuda, Amir Maimu Melech Batlum Bein Isa Bein B'Kadei Rabbi Yehuda says that melech, that salt and spices is nullified whether you bake, whether you go ahead and put it into a dish, into a cooked dish. So therefore, why in our mission does it seem to according to Rabbi Yehuda? Now, only the water is nullified, not the salt. But in this case, the salt is nullified like kasha habim melech sdaimis. In the case of the Mishnah, it was very fine salt. Melech sdaimis was an extremely fine salt. salt. The point was, when it comes to mayim achronim, after we bench, before we bench, you're supposed to wash your hands, because back then they used this type of salt called melech sedem. This was very fine. If you touch your eye, it could blind you because it was such fine particles. So therefore, we're saying that is the case of the Mishnah, because it's so fine that it fully disappears. It fully goes into the food without seeing it. But the different type of coarse melech, a coarse salt, which you could visibly see in the food, in such a case, in that case, we're going to say that's not going to be nullified. And then but now we have another question. We say another case that in that case of in the previous price that we just brought down, we said that that salt and water is going to be nullified whether it's in a baked good, whether it's in a cooked good. But over here we have another price that says that water and that water and salt is only going to be nullified in a baked dish, but not in a cooked dish because of its gravy. Like saying that's not a question. That when it's not bottle, when it's not bottle, when it's bottle is when it's very thick. When it's very when it's very thick, it's not going to be bottle because no, when it's thick, it's going to be bottle. Yeah. So we want to say that when it's very thick, then we're going to say it's going to be bottle. Because when it's very thick, you can't really point out the salt and you can't point out the spices. However, but when it's very thin, when raka, then it's not going to be bottle, because at that point, we're going to say you could see the spices and the salt floating on the top because it's a much more liquidy and it didn't and it's still noticeable. Okay. So now we're on a Mishnah, new Mishnah on Lam Tes and Alf. We're continuing our tchumim, the halachos of tchumim. That we said a flame is like the feet of the owner, meaning that the coals. Sorry, not a flame, the coals. So if I have coals and my friend wants to borrow my coals for his oven, he borrowed it on Yom Tov. It could only go as far as my tchum, not his tchum. That my tchum was set on Erev Yom Tov. However, the fire itself, the actual flame itself, there is no limit at all, and we'll have to get exactly what that means. Once we're talking about gacheles, once we're talking about coals, we're going to bring different halachas for it. So the coals of hektish, the coals of the Beis Hamikdash, if one uses it, he will get in trouble for mi'ilah, because you're not allowed to utilize items of the Beis Hamikdash. However, when it comes to the flame, you're not supposed to go ahead and use it. More like a rabbinic decree, you shouldn't use it. But if you do use it, you didn't transgress. When it comes to the fire itself, you didn't transgress any biblical commandment. And one takes a coal to the public domain, chayiv on Shabbos. So therefore, if you carry a coal on Shabbos, you're chayiv, because it's like any regular item. They shall have his potter. But if you carry a fire, and the Gemara is going to ask how in the world do you carry just a fire? There's always something connected to the fire. But we'll see soon that if you carry a fire in the Rosh Hashanah, then you're going to be potter. You're not going to be guilty. So we're going to start the Gemara. Then we're going to bring down 5 things that we said by a coal. The coal is like the feet of the owners. That's our Mishnah. But so the coal is restricted to the tchum, the 2,000 ames of the owners from the onset of Shabbos or Yom Tov. But the flame itself has no tchumim. 2. Again, our Mishnah mentioned this, that a coal of the Beis Hamikdash, if you utilize it for your own needs and you derive benefit from it, you're going to be ma'oil, you transgress the halach of mi'ilah. However, when it comes to the flame, you shouldn't use it, but if you use it, you did nothing wrong. 3. Now this is a new one. A coal of a avodah zarah, asura v'shal haves mutaris. But you're not allowed to utilize the coal of a avodah zarah because that's asur bahana. But you could go ahead and use the fire. Number 4. Again, this was mentioned in our Mishnah. That if you take out a coal into the Rosh Hashanah, you're going to be chayiv, and you take out a fire, you're going to be pater. 5. If someone says anoah, he makes a vow and says, I'm not going to have any hana, I'm not going to drive any benefit for my friend. Asur is b'kacheles. Then he's not allowed to use his. He said since he's going to say I'm not going to drive any benefit for my friend, it's forbidden for him to go ahead and use a coal, but he could go use a fire. Okay, now we're 2 lines down from the wide lines on 39a. Now we got to ask the question: Mashna shall have a desire the sharia mashna the hektish tasira. Now, if you notice that we went through the cases of the coals, we said that and the fire. We said the fire of a desire of idol worship, that is totally permitted. But the fire of the Beis Hamikdash, the rabbis decreed you shouldn't use it. You're right. Rabbinically, biblically, there's nothing wrong with utilizing, driving benefit from the fire of the Beis Hamikdash. However, when it comes to But the rabbis made a decree. So why is it the fire of Avodah Zarah? The rabbis did not make a decree. Instead, so told us it's totally permitted. For the Beis Hamikdash, they made a decree. So we answer as follows: Avodah Zarah the Meisa ubadli inishmina. We say that Avodah Zarah is repulsive, and people are going to stay from it naturally. So the whole idea of rabbinic decrees is to make sure we don't take the next step. If I utilize the fire, I might go utilize the coal. And the coal is biblically forbidden. So the rabbis will enact a decree that you shouldn't go use the fire. But the rabbis weren't worried that someone's going to even get to the first step of actually using a fire of Avodah Zarah, because that's disgusting. People are repulsed by it. Like Gazer Bar Rabbanan. So for rabbis to make a decree, hektish. But hektish, when it comes to Beis Hamikdash, people aren't disgusted by the Beis Hamikdash. No one's disgusted. In fact, everyone loves going up to the Beis Hamikdash and basking in its glory. Therefore, the people are not disgusted by Gazer Bar Rabbanan. So the rabbis made a decree: don't use the fire because we're afraid you're going to go to the next step and use the coals, which are forbidden biblically. Whereby the two dots on the first two dots on the white lines on Lamed Testament Aleph on 39a. Someone takes a coal to the public domain. That's our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said if you carry a coal and on Shabbos, you're chayiv. You transgress the isser of carrying. But if you carry a fire, you're fine. But Tani we learned. But elsewhere we learned if you carry a fire, even in the smallest amount, you're chayiv. The answer is why. In one place it says that shalheves, a fire, is permitted. In one place it says that shalheves is forbidden. No, we're talking about cases where you're carrying the flame on an actual chip. So the issue in here is you're carrying a chip which is on a fire, which has a fire in it. We said, but just say you're carrying a chip then. If the whole issue is the fire itself is not the issue here, because if you would be carrying the fire itself, and we'll explain how you carry fire. If you'd be carrying the fire itself, then that itself isn't. We said if you carry the fire itself, then we say that there is no issue. But carrying a fire with a chip, that's the issue. Just say carrying a chip is a problem. So we say so we say that we say that the chip itself. Why? The chip didn't have the right amount to carry, because halachas are, when it comes to carrying just rabbin, each item that you carry has to have a certain amount in order to be mechayiv you. Just to transgress the biblical commandment has to be a choshev amount. Now we learned it. The amount of wood that one has to carry in the public domain in order to be in order to transgress the issue of carrying on Shabbos is the amount of wood to bake, to cook a small egg. Now, a light egg, a small egg. So a little chip is not enough. Okay, now the question would be then, so what's he doing wrong? If the chip is not a problem, then if the chip is not the problem and the fire is not the problem, so carrying a chip to get a fire on a chip, what's the problem? So I don't know what the answer is. I don't think anyone addresses it unless I'm missing the point here. But I do think the answer would be then is that together that's chashuv, because the chip now became not. It's not just carrying. The chip itself is not just carrying. It's not just a chip. It's a wick which is fueling a fire. So that itself is important, even though the chip you can't go do anything with it. You can't cook an egg. But since there's a fire attached to it, it's fueling a fire. That increases its significance to the point where you would be chai. Abaye Omer. So that's one answer. It was with the chip. Some people like you smeared oil on a vessel, you lit the vessel, and you walk around with a flaming vessel. I've taken mishumana. So go ahead and say that the reason is that you're carrying the vessel. The vessel for sure is forbidden. So who cares about the fire? Even though there was no fire, the issue here is the vessel, not the fire. So we say bechaska. We're saying no, it's a piece. It's a shard. You broke off a shard of pottery. You lit the pot. You lit it. You smeared it with oil and you lit it. Now, typically mishum chaspa. So okay, go ahead. And the problem is carrying a shard. So bedlasle shiura. No, because it's not the right amount. That when it comes to pottery, it has to be a certain amount. It has to be a certain amount to put a board between to stack boards. I'm not exactly sure what the case is, but whatever the case is that the shard itself is too small to be chayiv for carrying in itself. But together with the fire, that is called enough to be chayiv. Now. But now our real problem is that hold on. Yeah, that's Rashi. By the Rashi says that. Rashi says that when you have the chip with the fire, that makes it, even though the chip itself is insignificant and you wouldn't be high for carrying it, but with the fire, it makes it choshev Rashi. Right? Okay, that's the answer. Now, our last issue is that the Mishnah says if you carry a flame and there's just a rabbim, you're putter. Now, how in the world does one carry a flame? Now, cases that Rashi explains that you're sitting in a private domain, you take a fire and you sort of like blow on it, and the sparks and the flame itself fly over the wall and land in the Shus Rabbim. So you're not carrying 4 amas neshama Shabbos, but you're causing the fire to go from a private domain to a public domain, which is forbidden. It would be if you throw a ball, it would be forbidden. But in this case, since it's just a flame, therefore, now in our case, just think of a flamethrower. Take a flamethrower and other issues of ignition, all that. If you get around all those issues of Shabbos, if you flamethrow from one domain to another domain, it's not a problem on Shabbos. Of course, if you take care of all of the issues involved. But for the fire itself, it's not a problem. Okay, we're going to start the new Mishnah on Lamites Amid Aleph on 39a. Bar shel yachid karaglei hayachid. So we say that the water that's in a bar, the water in a well of an individual, if someone else draws water from there, he will, on Shabbos or Yom Tov, he'll be restricted to the tchum of the owner of the well. But if it's a public domain, if it's the well for the people of the city, it's a public well, therefore it will be restricted to all the people together. Now, when the people went up to Bavel, when they were traveling from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, they used to have public cisterns and wells all along the way, and therefore anyone that drew the water, since it's public and really hefker, whoever draws it, it will be the water will be restricted to the one that actually draws it. Now, says the Gemara, Rami lei Rava le Rav Nachman. So Rava asked Rav Nachman, Tnan bar shel yachid raglei yachid. We said that a well of an individual is like the 2,000 ames of an individual. Reminu, but we asked Naharis hamoishchin umiyanes hanoivim harei raglei ka'odam. We said that running water, and also if we have wells that have a live stream underneath it, it's like the feet of everyone. So whoever takes it, it's his tchum. And we said no, we're talking about a collected well, meaning that it belongs to everyone. And we're talking about a collective well. Yeah. So also we're talking about stam naharis. We're talking about regular. It's a well that gets connected to regular rivers, so not one person owns it. Okay, we're going to end here now. Tomorrow is an hour before mincha, and hopefully we'll be finishing off tomorrow. And that will be that. And Rabbi Spivak is going to start Sunday. It was an honor to do this. I'll be back. No, I think it's more of a cold project now.
Well, when do you think you'll be back?
I don't know. We'll see. Well, he's doing Rosh Hashanah. And it was definitely an honor, and I like to take a point to shout out to my wife for actually letting me do this. It was all very, first I was going to say I'm going to do 2 weeks, and someone else will take over, and then I'm going to finish sucking, and someone else will take over. So it's a slippery slope until you get to it, but it's great. I got to finish 2 Masechtas with you guys, and if you see my wife, tell her thank you, definitely. And yeah, it is an honor. I'll definitely, thanks for you to showing up all the time. You guys are also getting up early. I know how you guys do it. And
I still don't. I've been doing this 6 months now. I still have no idea how.
Yeah. All right. So give Rabbi Spivak an easy time, or not. Driving crazy. Yeah, I'll be back.
I'll still see you around. It's not like you're leaving.
No, I'm not leaving.